What would you do if the land your people had called home for generations was ripped away, your promises broken, and starvation threatened your very existence? This was the reality that ignited the Dakota War of 1862, known also as the Minnesota Massacre, a conflict that stands as a haunting chapter in the story of Native American resistance. Today, we hear the voice of a Dakota witness, George W. Crooks, who, at just 6 years old, lived through this unimaginable upheaval. Born near Crow Creek, nestled between what are now Redwood Falls and Morton, Minnesota, George W. Crooks belonged to the Mdewakanton Dakota Sioux. His family led a peaceful life, their home much like that of white settlers with livestock and a sturdy brick house. Yet beneath this ordinary surface, a storm was gathering, one fueled by hunger, broken treaties, and injustice. The Dakota people faced relentless pressures from the U.S. government. Despite signing the Treaty of Mendota in 1851 and relinquishing vast tracts of their ancestral lands, the promised funds never fully arrived. Confined to a narrow strip along the Minnesota River, they were forced to abandon their semi-nomadic hunting traditions and adopt farming, often without adequate support. To make matters worse, local white traders exploited the Dakotas' unfamiliarity with paper money, cheating them mercilessly. Where once gold and silver coins had secured their families, now paper bills vanished swiftly and starvation crept closer. As George recounts, store owners like Merrick refused credit to starving Dakota, even cruelly taunting one man to eat grass like the horses. One harrowing moment ignited the powder keg. 4 young Dakota boys, desperate and hungry after a fruitless hunt, came upon a farmhouse. What began as a plea for food spiraled into violence when fear and desperation overwhelmed them. The boys took eggs without paying, and when confronted, one shot the farmer and his wife. This act of despair and rage would set the great conflict in motion. Chief Little Crow, the reluctant leader, pleaded for peace and urged his people to surrender the boys. But a rising tide of anger surged beyond his control. The war faction seized power, compelling Little Crow to lead a desperate bid for justice against the injustices his people had endured. On the 18th of August, 1862, the war party struck. Their first target was the Lower Sioux Agency. They exacted vengeance on corrupt merchants who had cheated them and attacked settler communities. White settlers fled in terror, many taking refuge in nearby forts. But as Crooks reveals, even Dakota who sought peace were caught in the deadly crossfire. The conflict raged for over a month, culminating in the Battle of Wood Lake on the 23rd of September. There, the Dakota forces suffered defeat under U.S. government troops commanded by General Henry H. Sibley, who spoke the Dakota language and was viewed as a friend by many. The aftermath was brutal. Over 300 Dakota men were sentenced to death, accused of participating in the uprising. President Abraham Lincoln intervened, reviewing each case personally and reducing the number to just 39. However, on the 26th of December, 38 Dakota men were hanged in Mankato, Minnesota, the largest mass execution in American history. Little Crow escaped the immediate carnage but met a tragic end the following year, killed by a farmer who did not even know his identity. The Dakota survivors were stripped of their lands entirely, forced onto reservations far from their homeland, enduring profound loss and displacement. Through Crook's eyes, we also glimpse humanity amidst horror. His mother risked her life to hide white captives' children in a secret pit beneath their teepee, sheltering them from the rage of war. A minister beloved by both Dakota and settlers was cared for by Indian women after being gravely wounded in the turmoil. These moments remind us of hope and resilience amid suffering. Despite his hardship, Crooks carries no bitterness. Even after decades, he invites listeners to understand both sides of the tragedy, a plea to see the Dakota not as aggressors, but as a people fighting desperately to protect their land, their culture, their lives. Fast forward to recent years. In a gesture toward healing, the state of Minnesota and the Historical Society returned some of the contested lands to the Mdewakanton Dakota Sioux and offered an apology. The Dakota War and the memory of those executed men remain a solemn part of Dakota identity, remembered annually with reverence and a call for justice. Today, the Dakota struggle reminds us all of the consequences of broken promises, prejudice, and the loss of native lands and lives. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths and acknowledge the resilience of those who fought to keep their heritage alive against overwhelming odds. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. See you in the next one.